Good, a fresh donation. This devotee will contribute to your growing immorality. The die is cast. The means of sacrifice has been determined. Ah, yes. For this one, I think, the rope engine. Your desire for my evil influence is gratifying. You will go far.
The Temple of Avo and the Chapel of Skorm, both two locations in the Fable universe that almost every player has at the very least visited, but maybe not all players have delved deep into the secrets of what you can do there. In today's video, we're going to be looking at both. We're going to see exactly what the types of rewards are you can get for doing the quests related to these locations. And we're just going to go into some of the lore as well on what these two locations actually stand for. So let's get straight into the Temple of Avo.
So we'll start with the Temple of Avo, as it's the considered to be the good side and the positive force in Albion. And it's a location based on Knothole Island or in the Witchwood area, and it's basically dedicated to the supposed god of good deeds in Avo. The quote here is, "The Temple of Light is here, generosity will be rewarded," is a disembodied voice saying that as you enter the temple. The temple itself is a very small but useful building, dedicated in alignment to the light side and representing all that is good and pure in Albion. It can be found near Knothole Glade. Inside the temple there is a circular fountain that accepts gold donations. If you donate a large amount of gold, the two acolyte priests in the temple will gift you with rewards. Evil characters gain more good points than good characters who donate the same amount. The opposite counterpart to the Temple of Avo is the previously mentioned Chapel of Skorm, where you also sacrifice people in order to gain evil points and other disreputable rewards.
Yep, so in terms of rewards here, you obviously, as you said, get character alignment good points, which can change your appearance. You know, you can get the butterflies and the halo, and you can lose the horns and the flies. You can unlock the title of Paladin, which is a pretty good one. You can get the Gift of Youth, which is probably the most interesting one out of the bunch, and I think it's actually the final reward, which I'll get to in a second. But you can reduce 4 to 10 years of your character's life. So instead of ending the game at around 40 years old, you could be approximately 10 years younger, which is pretty cool. Such an interesting system actually in Fable with the ages that I don't think any other game has really tapped into yet, even to this day. And then finally, the Sentinus, which is a legendary Great Mace, which is another reward you can get. And here is the sort of order of when you get these rewards. It's based on how much money you actually donate. So the first reward is after 100 gold, you get the 15 good alignment points. After 1,000 gold, you get 100 plus points to your good character. And again, this is sort of variant based on how evil you were to begin with. If you come when you're fully evil and then you start donating, you can actually cleanse yourself faster than if you're already good. Giving 3,000 gold will give you 170 plus good points to your character, and then finally 50,000 plus will get you the 4 to 10 years off your age.
Yeah, and there's a quest, obviously, or two quests that take place within the boundaries of the map part. One is called Temple of Light, which literally is, I believe, just the donation. And then the other one is the Sword in the Stone. We've done a previous video on the sword called Harbinger, which is essentially a sword in a stone in the same part of the map as the temple. So I guess moving on to Fable 2, there's a brief mention of it as well. In Fable 2, it is said that the temple was destroyed and replaced with the Temple of Light in Oakfield.
Yeah, so I guess they ended up with the early trivia name for the temple anyways, because we got a bit of trivia here that says that the Temple of Avo was actually originally going to be called the Temple of Light anyways, But that's what they decided to call the quest line for the Temple of Avo, and then obviously in Fable 2, the Temple of Light is just the overall name for the Temple of Avo. Strangely as well, apparently the acolytes also wear black robes instead of white, which I think is just because that's the only color they had as a model in the game, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and interesting is when talking to the Snowspire Oracle in the Lost Chapters and Anniversary, it claims that Avo in fact does not exist, and that Avo's temple was simply built in a place where willpower was strong, tending towards good and healing those who stood there. The Oracle cynically states that the ruthless trader who discovered this location sensed an opportunity. He invented Avo and constructed this temple there, specifically to extract gold from those who felt the god's power. Likewise, this same trader allegedly built the Chapel of Skorm within the evil nexus of Darkwood for a similar profiteering motive. Although, as we'll talk about with Skorm, he doesn't really benefit monetarily from that. It's just people getting killed in terms of benefits. So, not too sure if that's that's just part of the Lionhead's way of building the rumour mill and this sort of mystery surrounding it. The Guildmaster, as you might remember, when you first sort of break out away from the Heroes Guild and get out on the road and do some quests, he also gives you a bit of a warning, doesn't he, about false worshipping false gods or something like that. So I think there's a lot of skepticism in this world about it, but there's undeniably something that does happen. I mean, the gift of youth is a pretty special thing, and you can't, how can you become good just by giving money? There's obviously something there.
Yeah, and that doesn't even go to mention the fact that there is a weapon named after Avo that has similar powers to one of the strongest weapons in all of Fable universe, which is obviously yeah. So I don't think as you say, there's cynicism, but I don't think there's enough evidence to prove that it's fake or enough evidence to prove that it's real. So it could go either way.
And we might talk a couple of theories about what it really is, both in lore and both by the creators, maybe after this next little section on Skorm.
Yep, so moving on to the Chapel of Skorm here. This one is a deadly shrine dedicated to the Devil of Albion, whose name is Skorm. Here, evil heroes can donate other people's blood to the worshippers of Skorm to receive the gifts of evil. This is also the place where you can obtain the ultimate bow, which is Skorm's bow. So in terms of location,
worth it, by the way.
It is, yeah. It's fantastic.
Whether you choose the evil path or not, it's worth getting Skorm's bow and then bringing your alignment back afterwards, I think.
Yeah, so I guess whichever alignment you want to take, do the opposite one first, because then that actually makes it easier to get back to the other side, like we explained with the Temple of Avo.
And there's no time limit, by the way. If you want Skorm's bow, you can get it as soon as you can get to Skorm's Chapel. I think the trick is, and I'm sure we might go into it later, but I think the trick is you're supposed to sacrifice exactly in the middle of the night, at midnight.
Yeah, at midnight.
Which is actually not easy because they don't have time.
It's very tricky.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you can do it, you get Skorm's bow straight away, so you can get it at the start of the game, pretty much.
So in terms of location, it's the second path away from Darkwood Camp, so obviously it's pretty deep in the middle of Darkwood. And when traveling to the Chapel of Skorm, regardless of the time of day, when you enter the sort of region that the chapel is in, the sky actually turns blood red. And this is obviously a clear sign showing that you're going the right way. And again, just goes to show that there is some kind of power at the chapel.
Either that or, red sky at night, Shepherd's Delight, red sky in the morning, Shepherd's Warning,
Yeah.
But interestingly, because the whole of Darkwood is just nighttime, pretty much, isn't it? The whole time. So the only difference between, because you're in Darkwood already, the difference it's instead of being just normal nighttime, it's also a red-coloured nighttime.
Yeah.
The actual chapel itself, again, is another smallish building, similar to the Temple of Avo, and you can actually sacrifice followers to Skorm and then receive certain gifts. So you can, earn the title, for example, Necromancer. You can actually get the age reduction here as well, interestingly enough. But the most treasured and obviously valued gift is the mentioned Skorm's bow. You can get evil points obviously too, depending on the time at which the sacrifices took place. But just to let you know, it's easier to get Skorm's bow the more good alignment you have, because people are less likely to follow you when you have massive horns, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and again, like we sort of touched on as well, it's very easy to sort of flip-flop between the two alignments, because as we said, like the more evil you are, the easier it is to get good points, and the more good you are, I think, is the same way, becoming evil, which I think is a pretty cool system. So yeah, in terms of like the sacrificing, it is pretty finicky. We sort of talked about it. Getting that midnight on the dot is pretty difficult. I've tried many times. I have gotten it before, but it's definitely like it's definitely worth trying a few times if you don't get it straight away, because the bow is absolutely fantastic. Pretty difficult to get, but once you do get it, you can get it at the start of the game, so 100% worth it. And in terms of quest related to the Chapel of Skorm, it's kind of the same as the Temple of Avo. The quest is basically just to sacrifice people until you get all the rewards. So you'll get that as soon as you arrive, and you can do that in your own time, but you can also just go straight out and do it day one if you want. Then moving on to sort of Fable 2's lore on the Chapel of Skorm, in the same way that the Temple of Avo was supposedly destroyed and replaced. The Chapel of Skorm was also destroyed and replaced, and this time it was replaced by the name Temple of Shadows, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's the Shadow Court.
Yeah,
Shadow
quite
Court
possibly.
Temple as well. And we'll talk about a couple of theories later on. There's a bit of trivia for Skorm's chapel first, and right to the left of the temple's entrance there's a chest that contains the assassin's shirt, which is always useful, especially if you want to dress up like an assassin. In the trader escort quest, you can actually sacrifice one or two of the traders that accompany you for some extra evil points. It is recommended to leave the trader you wish to keep alive in Darkwood Camp to keep him from accidentally being sacrificed.
Accidental human sacrifice, always fun.
I know. And also, if you sacrifice someone here, you'll lose 10 years of age. It can only happen once unless you get it during the trader escort quest and hero save it, which is now something that you can't do anymore, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
However, you can actually get I think you can drop 20 years of your life, or reduce it, by doing both temple and chapel stuff.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. It's also revealed in the Lost Chapters by the Oracle, supposedly in the same way that Avo might not exist. The Oracle claims that Skorm does not exist, and that the temple was supposedly just built by a ruthless traitor, where the evil energy was particularly strong. And yeah, as we said, the traitor also built the Temple of Avo, supposedly. Again, many possible theories there. I don't think that theory is completely airtight, obviously due to the fact that there is like genuine magical power in these two areas that do actually have effects on the player, that can't really be ignored.
Basically, if you choose to attack the two attendants in the chapel, there's a disembodied voice that will say out loud, "Fool, my acolytes are your channel to me," which is always cool.
Yeah, and again,
still kill them though.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. I'm pretty sure I've done it before as well. Yeah. I mean, it's cool that there's this embodied voice, and it could be coming directly from Skorm, but also it could just be like in classic Fable fashion. It could just be somebody behind a pillar or something, just like saying it. There's not really any way to like confirm that either. So
like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, there's no like hard evidence there either. So it's difficult to say. Fishing in the water within the chapel is believed to yield larger fish, as well as a higher ratio of moonfish with respect to the total fish caught, which is kind of interesting. I didn't know that myself.
And after the bandit spy extraction quest, which you don't have to do, it's one of those optional quests, the contact in Bowerstone North, named as Tanya, will tell the player a message: "Remember, the blue nymph crouches at 3:15. This has to do with the correct moment to sacrifice the victims. The best types are the bigger mercenaries." And this is several seconds after the off-screen bandit yells, "Lights out, you horrible lot."
Yep, so that's basically all the trivia we have for the Chapel of Skorm, and basically all the like factual lore that we have. I guess we can go into a little bit of like our own theories and just possible things that could be going on here. So I'll let you take off with that one.
Yeah, well, potential theory obviously is, as with everything in Fable, that Lion had put in was representations of either real life kind of laws, folklore tales, old wives' tales, or whatever in the world, and representations of things that were really out in the world. And as such, perhaps they were looking at a sort of light temple, like a church, like a Jesus or God worshipping place, and also a satanic worshipping place. So this is obviously this is an obvious link. But if you want to factor it into sort of Albion's lore itself, and go a bit deeper, I think obviously there is a bigger pooling of mana in these places as well. Maybe Avo and Skorm themselves don't exist, but maybe they're representations of things that come from the void. And if Skorm's chapel was turned into the Shadow Court or the Shadow Temple in Fable 2, the Shadow Court we know exists. So there's every chance that it was them all along, and the Shadow Court could potentially be the court. So there's potential links to Jack of Blades or something else behind there. And I think Avo is probably some kind of good deity or something that's around in the void as well, that not everything from the void is evil potentially.
Yeah, that's definitely sort of my favorite theory, especially just due to the fact that obviously turning into the Shadow Temple just sort of is a direct reference possibly to the Shadow Court. And it just goes to show, like, why wouldn't they have people worship them, I guess? Like, I mean, surely they would. Maybe they don't receive, like, direct power from people's worship or sacrifices, but, I mean, even just, like, spitballing a little bit, in Darkwood, perhaps, like, the sacrifices, their, like, souls or something get turned into those constructs that Jack of Blades use. Like, there's a lot of different possibilities there, I feel like. I feel like there's definitely ways that the Shadow Court could benefit from this worship, even the monetary one in Avo's temple. If that is, going to the Shadow Court, then yeah, maybe in some way, I don't know, maybe they could make use of that. Jack of Blades obviously is absolutely in need of like stuff like money and stuff like that in Fable 1, because he's sort of just like closer to a normal person at that point than he probably was in the past when he was still with the other two members of the Shadow Court. So
yeah, and I think the point is that in future Fable games, there's going to have to be some kind of reference. And I'm sure there were references to Avo and Skorm later on. I know that one of the things I always found interesting was that they used them as kind of blaspheming ways to speak. Like, remember one of the clips with Briar Rose shouting Skorm like as a kind of swear word. It was always good. And then you had people like, oh, thank Avo you're here. It was always very interesting. But
yeah, and they're definitely obviously like two sides of the same coin, so there's definitely a link between the two.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully, obviously we don't have all the information now, and there's no way to sort of predict everything, but hopefully in the next Fable game, there might be, some new sort of form to these temples, or a new, bit of lore, maybe even just like a book in the game that gives us a bit more information about them.
Yeah, and as with many things in real life, I think the fact that there's a bit of a mystery around it probably is how it's going to be. It's always going to be up to interpretation.
Yeah.
Just like, I guess, the religion and paranormal stuff in real life, really.
Yeah, there'll always be, like, the cynics, but there'll always be people who believe in it. And I think, yeah, unless we get some more information in the future, it's going to have to remain sort of a mystery.
And I think with that, we'll see you in the next Fable lore video.
Yep, see you next time.
The gods are pleased by your donation. Very pleased.
Your continued devotion has earned you a new title. Go and spread Avo's word throughout the land.